Shepherd, and if you are interested in folk costumes on a budget, then keep on watching, because today I am turning a Lucky Thrift Store Find into a deceivingly authentic looking folk costume skirt. This is actually a follow-up video to this one right here, in which I talked a lot more about the Transylvanian area of Háromszék, the main inspiration to this project. So for more info, I suggest you watch it. Or don't. I'm not your mom. And do you know what else I am not? The owner of a silver play button? Yeah, so go subscribe, because only about 30% of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed to my channel. And if you are one of those darling sweet little lambs who is already subscribed, thank you so much, you are the best. And you're probably here for some actual sewing content, so let's get right into it. First and foremost, as it's customary with garments that are about to be heavily modified, I started by unpicking some seams, more specifically the waistline and the bottom hem, because this skirt is, folklorically speaking, on the shorter side, so I wanted to get as much length out of it as possible. Unpicking seams is, of course, not a very extravagant or fabulous task at all, but luckily I had my treasured soulmate of a cat, Morgul, to keep me company. It was at this point that I got to the zipper of the skirt. And I'll soon explain why I decided to keep it in, even though traditionally folk skirts don't feature one. You see, the great thing about folkloric skirts with no zipper is that the closure can either overlap, match up perfectly, or leave a small gap. And whatever the case, the apron is just going to cover it all up. This method leaves room for the wearer's body to change. A super useful trick from back in the days when clothes were worn for literal decades by various family members, as in a daughter could inherit a skirt from her mother or elder sister. However, I want to be able to wear this skirt for apronless, folk-bound fits as well. And in that case, a zipper can come pretty useful for, you know, not having my hoo-ha peeking out randomly. On the other hand, having a zipper also means that the new pleats of the waistline won't just have to resemble a folklorically authentic looking stripe ratio, but they will also have to fit my waist a lot more exactly. Now, historically in this area, the skirts more often than not are plain and simply just gathered, but they do sometimes have pleated skirts as well. So I played around with the stripes until I found a pattern that worked. One tiny little detail that I decided to go for is to leave the little really narrow mustard colored stripes, because I've seen a couple of extant garments, granted from a neighboring area of Gyergyó. They would also add the most delicate and discreet of golden threads. It would only show as it glistened in the sun as the fabric was shifting and moving, so it was actually a very low-key flex that somebody was really wealthy. And that's what these remind me of as well. Okay, obviously it's not golden or metallic even, but still, it gives me the right vibes. Now with the pleats all pinned in place, it's time to sew them down. Then I stitched it all to the original waistband, simply leaving some of the extra fabric to hang over one side of the zipper. I have this much waistband left over. Now I'm just gonna flip it over and stitch it. I'm not going to cut this off because who knows, maybe one day somebody will need to wear it who is a slightly larger size, and I want to give them the option of still being able to wear it. I'm only now thinking that I should have added a pocket. I can still do that later. I'm still going to move on to the hemline. That's where we get to have fun with some traditional velvet decorations. Naturally, As soon as I pulled out my stash of black velvet, my color-coordinated cat decided that it would be just the perfect pile for her. So yeah, as the crazy cat lady that I am, I let her at it and only came back after a while when she was finished napping. It's also worth noting that my stash of black velvet looks a lot more like a pile of odds and ends and weird little shapes. And that's simply because I have great difficulty sourcing good quality velvet at an affordable price. So instead of going over budget, I keep an eye out for it at the thrift store. Whenever I spot an item that is made of good quality black velvet, preferably vintage, because they just don't make them like they used to, I'll buy it no matter the size. Because it turns out stuff like small children's skirts are actually the right amount to decorate the neckline or arm's eye of a folkloric vest. And that leaves me wondering, do you have any sort of specific thrift store find that you seek out only then to use in a totally unexpected or unintended sort of way? If you do, then please drop it in a comment, because I'm always on the lookout for budget-friendly thrift hacks. Please share. So yeah, even though black velvet used to be the fabric to be added to a garment as a symbol of wealth, I acquire mine the budget-friendly way. The irony is indeed not lost on me. Anyway, cutting up smaller items may produce enough black velvet to decorate a vest, but in the case of a skirt, we're going to need something a bit bigger.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Okay, so I've actually decided to use the piece of fabric that I have for my mother, only because this is the same velvet that I used for the vest. That way it will be more of a set. And now that I think of it, I was actually rushing ahead of myself. Before I would add the velvet, I need to add the weight. So basically we are going to put a stripe of fabric, usually cotton or something on the cheaper side, historically speaking. It's going to go on the inside of the hem and it's going to give the skirt some structure. During dancing, it's just going to reveal just the slightest splash of color. My piece of fabric, I think it may have been a tablecloth. It came with a hem on the edge. I could unpick this seam, but I will choose the lazy girl method, which is just cutting it off like this. This might be like a teeny tiny bit of waste, but I can live with that. I thrifted everything for this project. So now I can join these together with a super basic seam. And now to sew it on. Right side, flip back just a centimeter. Now that I am getting close to the beginning of the stripe, I'm going to cut right over here. Now we're going to flip it, leave a couple of millimeters of the skirt's fabric, and then we're just going to sew along the hemline. Now I've just checked the time and it's really late, and I think I'm going to call it a day. See you tomorrow. Why hello! I am back! You'll have to enjoy the gorgeous aesthetics of my band-aids. You'll see I'm wearing a unicorn on one finger and Pinkie Pie on another, and a cute little avocado on the third one. If you do this too, please let me know in a comment, because I really hope I'm not the only one who collects basically children's band-aids. But anyway, let's get back to finishing this skirt. I'm just going to fold over about a centimeter or so, kind of hemming it in a way. Hemingway. As a rule of thumb, I am letting you know in advance that I will soon be measuring and cutting about the same width of black velvet as the cotton strips that I am working on right now. By using a near identical width, I can make sure that the stitching of the weight will be entirely covered up by the black velvet on the right side of the skirt. You could definitely finish this up by hand just to have a super neat look, but I'm going to machine stitch it because it's going to be hidden on the outside by the velvet stripe that we are soon going to apply. Now, when it comes to the exact size, placement and number of velvet stripes, there is quite a lot of options and variety to be found in the book that I was using as inspiration, CK People in Their Sunday Best. At first, I fell in love with this design, but since my skirt is on the shorter side, raising the velvet this high up from the hemline wouldn't be very aesthetically pleasing. So instead, I decided to go for something like this, with the velvet running along the hemline of the skirt and another narrow velvet ribbon just above it. And even though this specific skirt only features one thin ribbon, I eventually will be adding two, but only because I want to imitate the pattern that I used for my vest. But before that, let's measure, cut and sew the wider stripe. And yes, of course I have cat hair over my velvet. Are you even surprised? I'm going to take all of the stripes and stitch them together. So I'm just going to lay out the velvet right side up, just barely overlapping. I'm going to place the right side of the skirt and we are going to stitch a line very close to the hem. I'm actually using a foot which will help me stay straight, but if you don't have that, that's perfectly fine as well. Just try to stitch a line very close. When I started out stitching the velvet, I flipped a little bit of the end so that way we have a clean finish. Proportions are very, very familiar to my eyes and my soul somehow, so this already makes me kind of giddy. When finishing these velvet stripes on folkloric skirts, just top stitch the velvet. That's the quickest way to do it. Countless extant garments have the velvet applied in this way. So usually seamstresses don't fuss with hand stitching it. However, since I've started meddling into historical costuming, as in not folkloric but the city fashion, I have a newfound love for hand finishes. So because of this, I've decided that I'm going to finish this off by hand, slowly but very beautifully. Why hello! It is now the next day. I have kitty assistants and some brand new band-aids. Today we're doing Hello Kitty and Moomin. I have to finish this today, so let's get going. Just to make sure that I am keeping the same width on the whole length, I'm going to fold down a centimeter pin and just double check with the measuring tape. Naturally, the cats were being super helpful, as always, especially Mr. M. Hey. Hey. Okay, so now that I have measured and pinned everything that needed to be pinned, I can start stitching all around it, if you will allow me. Okay, so this took a lot longer than I expected. First of all, because hand sewing takes time. So now we are finally at the very last step of folklorifying this thrifted skirt. All we need to do now is add the black velvet ribbon trim. Oh, and even though I've decided to stitch the upper part of the velvet on by hand, I am going to stitch the ribbon by machine because it has the little sides where the stitching can run without actually being very noticeable. Back when I added my trim to my folkloric vest, I used this neat little trick to measure out the right distance. I simply added one more line of ribbon and then removed it like so. And now we stitch down the upper side as well. It starts to look so very much like an authentic piece. I am insanely excited about this. Let's just put on the second row of velvet, then I'm gonna try it on. Ah! Oh my gosh, it's finished! It's finished! Let's try it on, shall we? Yeah, somehow I lost the footage of me trying on the skirt for the first time. Sorry about that. But I absolutely love it! I had to hurry to finish it for a personal deadline because I wanted to wear it the following weekend for the largest folk dance festival that's hosted in Budapest every year. By the way, I will be posting a vlog of that event in a couple of weeks, hopefully. So do subscribe if you crave more folksy content. And with that, I'm off to style this skirt into some crazy fits, possibly, probably, very likely featuring some crop tops, which will probably put me on the radar of the folk police. So, bye-bye!